Hey, y'all.
We welcome to the program now Oliver Diaz, opinion contributor, SuperTalk Mississippi News, and former justice for the Mississippi Supreme Court. Judge, good to see you, man.
Hey, Gerard, great to see you again, man. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed being here on a Friday afternoon.
Yes, sir. So you wrote an article recently published at SuperTalk Mississippi, and it was entitled "A Letter to My Son as He Leaves for College." And I read that with interest and thought of it in two ways. One was when I went off to college, and then when my children went off to college, thinking about just the differences in those experiences. But there's some things that are kind of timeless, I would say.
Exactly.
From that relationship. And then there are things that are more appropriate for the time frame, I think, which is just kind of an emblematic of life in general as life progresses. But that human nature element is permanent. And I think you spoke to that to a great extent in the letter. What was your inspiration for this, Oliver?
Well, I thought about that. I'm trying to figure out what my inspiration was, and I think that it was probably more about me than it was about my son. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I was telling my son what I needed to tell. And my family's just like everybody else. We don't have time to sit down and talk. I find myself always wanting to make certain that I see my son getting ready to go off for college, and I want to make certain that he knows what to do and doesn't make the same mistakes that I made. I made mistakes, and I wish somebody were there to straighten me out and not let me get into those mistakes. So I wanted to do something sort of as a guide, not necessarily for him, but for me, to make sure that I'd said the things that I needed to say over the years. But it's hard to find that time to sit down and talk. And I said, I think I'm just going to try to sit down and put this in writing and see what comes out.
Well, it was excellent, and you made a list, a series, if you will, numbered them of things you wanted to say. It was just advice, sage advice that you would expect, a list of 10 that you would expect from a father to a son as they kind of branch out on their own. But I've always thought, and I know you and I kind of share in that we were very involved with our sons in their youth sports career, in coaching and traveling. And you're right, as you pointed out in your article, you spend an awful lot of time with your son, or it could be a daughter, in those efforts. And of course, I think it's healthy. I think that's a good part of life when you're raising kids. But is it not true, though, that what you hope is that you've set the example proper, and you've had these kind of teaching moments through their life in your household, so that when you finally do release them out on their own, that all that kind of resonates and it guides them when they're away from you?
That's exactly what we want. You know, Sports is a great example for life. I mean, I learned so many of my lessons from my sporting days when I was on a football team, learned how to be part of a team. I put in there one of the best pieces of advice. I was a pretty good water skier back in the day. I enjoyed water skiing. And my instructor told me, he said, I got really frustrated. I would fall occasionally and not do something right. And he looked at me and said, if you're not falling, you're not learning. It's those mistakes that we make that build character and teach us things. So we learn those things on the ball field. And as we send our kids off to college, we want to make sure that they learn those lessons. I put in there how, it's really important when you get to college to be a good student. You want them to learn, get good grades and excel in school. But it's more than just being a good student. It's being a good person. Hopefully we've taught them the lessons that they need to learn in order to be not only a good student, but a very good person. And I tried to spell those things out. I talked about how being a gentleman is important. And I said, hold the door open for a date, carry their books, hold the umbrella, things like that. And I said, that sounds like it's from a different time. It's a long time ago when those were the norms. And I said, actually that is from a different era. But, those are the things that mark a person as not only a man. A man is somebody who is aged enough to be over 21. You're a man. But you want to be more than a man. You want to be a gentleman and have people recognize that when they see your children or you. And so those are the types of things we hope that our kids pick up as they leave the house for the first time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you and I may be considered kind of old-fashioned in that regard. But something that I notice that always bothers me is when I see folks at the college age, maybe even younger in some cases, and they're carrying on these conversations, and they're just laced with all this vile language and profanity. It's like, no, you shouldn't talk like that, especially in the locker room, okay, maybe. But out there in the public, or certainly around females, I still can't get accustomed to that, Oliver. I don't accept it.
Well, I never have either. And I didn't even address that in this letter to my son. I hope that I set the example for that. I don't use that sort of language in everyday life. Even when we get frustrated and upset, that's just something I choose not to do. And I hope that over, 18 years, my son has watched me over the years and, you don't need that sort of language. A, a teacher told me early on, I think it's probably in college, that people who use swear words, it's because they have a limited vocabulary. I mean, we can
Yeah.
express ourselves without need to resort to those types of words. And so I always saw it as a sign of intelligence when you can express your feelings without having to use profanity.
I totally agree. Item 3, by the way, in your list, being confident doesn't mean being cocky. Be humble.
Cocky, yes.
Yeah. Something else you said that I completely support. Make an effort to get to know people of different races, religions, cultures. This country is great because of our diversity. We are stronger and better because of our differences. Embrace them, respect them, listen to them. We've gotten too tribal in our country, have we not? We tend to only associate with people that look like us, think like us, share our values and views to the point where we don't even think any others exist.
Yeah, especially at college, you have that opportunity. It's so much more comfortable for us as people. I mean, I think it's just human nature. You want to associate with people who are like you, who have the same ideas and
Sure.
have the same experiences. I mean, it's just natural to want to do that. But it broadens our horizons so much when we step out of our box and we meet other people. And college is such a great experience for that. I mean, you've got people coming from all over the world, and you have different religions, probably things you've never been exposed to in your little hometown. You can meet folks coming from across the world to your college, and they have different experiences and different religions and different practices and customs, and you can learn from those. You can experience those, and even if you don't pick those up, you're better for having experienced those, and just to know that there are other people out there.
You also advise to not be afraid to fail. And, it feels like too much in our society. You see situations where parents get so protective, they just don't want their child to ever fail. And that's not real life, not real world. But you advise, don't be afraid of that and challenge yourself and just get back up, go after it again.
Yeah, I think I quoted Vince Lombardi. He said, it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up.
Get up.
We're all going to get knocked down at some point. We're all going to fail at some point. But how we respond to that failure is really what defines us.
And college is a good place to experience that because most students through their college tenure, you're going to have a series of ups and downs. That's almost inevitable.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, I struggled in college. One of the pieces of advice I gave was to sit on the first row when you get into class. It's such a more personal experience. You're up close to the professor. You can interact better. I put that in there because I did not do that when I was in college. I would sit in the back. I learned that later in life when I would go to professional seminars. I learned that wow, I can learn so much more when I'm up close to the speaker and
Yeah.
interact with them. And so I wanted to pass that along, even though that's something I didn't do when I was in college. I hoped that somebody would have told me that before then.
Well, it was a great piece. It's fantastic advice. I encourage everybody to read it at SuperTalk Mississippi on our website. Judge, good to see you, and good work here, and good luck to your son in his college career.
Thank you so much. Great being here. Hope you enjoy it.
You got it. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.